Folks at home, welcome back to the Crimson Oak Pond, home of these aggressive tiger bass, as well as a variety of other wildlife, including a pair of bald eagles who have been the star of the show recently. But the objective of today's video is to catch some smallmouth bass and add them to our smaller pond that we call Cedar Falls. And if we catch enough of them, we'll also add some to the 5-acre pond. So the first stop is going to be the Tennessee River, and we're also going to be traveling out to New Mexico to visit some of that beautiful elk country. But before we do that, let's get a quick update on some of the wildlife, and I love watching the bald eagles. They've made this pond their new home, and they're out here hunting every day. And they quickly figured out the schedule of the bluegill feeders, and I love how they dive in and just float. You can see the other bald eagle on a stump back there in the background. Looks like he's already caught a fish. And this other one's struggling to get out of the water. Not sure if he caught one this time. But you'll be seeing a lot more of the eagles later in the video, as well as a showdown between the eagles and our pet duck. And it's a good one. So I stopped by to check on the tiger bass one last time before I left town, and I noticed something unusual. It looked like a couple of them had something sticking out of their mouths, and I was a little bit confused because it wasn't any sort of fish. It almost looked like a type of plant. But as I was walking up to the wetland filter, I found out what it was. So we recently had a cold front move through, and all of those prawns that we stocked in these ponds can't survive that cold weather. When that water temp drops, they get real sluggish and lethargic, and make an easy meal for the bass. You can see this one's still alive and kicking. And now our big guy Tiger has a little dilemma on his hands. He chose to eat one of the largest prawns, and as you can see here, the bodies of the prawns are pretty big, but I can see how it would be almost impossible to digest those pinchers because sometimes they can get up to 12 inches long. And you can tell by the size of that pincher, he got one of the big boys. And I noticed we had some more of them right here at the base of the waterfall, and we stocked these in both the wetland filter and the main body of the pond. But I would love to know if some of these washed down the waterfall, which kind of looks like what happened here. Man, these guys are everywhere. A little bit further down the waterfall, we got a couple more of them right here. No telling how many of them the bass ate. But on a positive note, I came back the next day and found the long pincher that Tiger had hanging out of his mouth. So now we know that the bass eat the prawns and spit the pinchers out. But as we've discussed in our previous videos, we only have tiger bass in this pond, and I wanted to add some new species. And believe it or not, I've been a fisherman all my life, but I've never caught a smallmouth bass. It's always been on my bucket list. And pound for pound, they're one of the hardest fighting fish out there. And smallmouth also love rocks, so with all these aqua blue stones we have in Cedar Falls, it should make a perfect fit. But there's one other species I would love to catch, and that's a spotted bass. You guys have seen how aggressive the tiger bass are. The spots are just as aggressive, if not a tad more. So if we get lucky, we may catch a spot as well. Alright, we're on the road, headed to the Tennessee River, where I'm going to be fishing with one of my good college friends, Josh Louie. And we're going to be fishing close to the dam that separates Lake Guntersville and Nickajack Lake. But one of the key details I can't leave out is that it's going to be well below freezing this morning at 16 degrees. And there's a few positives and negatives associated with that. And the first positive is that we're the only ones here at the boat ramp. So this morning we've got this section of the Tennessee River all to ourselves. And this is the part we've been dreading, driving 50 miles an hour at 16 degrees. You guys can imagine how fun that is. And now let's talk about a few of the difficulties when you're fishing in temps below freezing. So it's so cold this morning that the water freezes to the fishing line. And as I'm reeling it in, it's basically like I've got an ice maker. It's just constantly churning frozen water. And every so often it builds up so much on the eyes that the line can't pass through. So let's just say there's a few challenges on today's fishing trip, but it's a good thing I'm fishing with Josh because he's already got the spots dialed in. And we quickly got on one of those targeted species we were after, the spotted bass. But on the Tennessee River they have to be 12 inches in length to keep them, and the first couple we caught didn't measure, so we had to release them. Nothing like a fresh icicle on the reel. So after the first hour, no luck with the smallmouth or keeper spots. We caught one nicer largemouth, and hey, look what we got here. Another bald eagle. It's like they're following me around. But I had a feeling our luck would change when the eagle showed up, because I know from experience at my pond, wherever the eagles are at, the fish are going to be nearby. And almost like it was on cue, Josh hooked up. Alright, we got our first keeper-sized spotted bass, and this little guy just hit the pet fish lottery. We're going to add him to Cedar Falls, where he's going to live a life of luxury and all-you-can-eat bait fish. So now that we have one of our targeted species, we wanted to move to an area with some stronger current because smallmouth love fast-moving current. So we're fishing right here at the dam, and Josh hooked up on another species that we weren't 100% sure what it is. If you guys know what type of fish this is, leave it in a comment down below. but he sure has some sharp teeth. And not long after that, Josh hooked up with the biggest fish of the day, and while we were hoping it was a giant smallie, it's a big drum. We knew it was only a matter of time before our luck changed with a smallmouth. Let's watch it unfold. Got it. Oh, I can't tell. He's decent, yeah. Really? Yeah, it was better.
No spot?
Yeah. Oh, it was smallmouth.
It was.
Oh, we missed our first smallie. So I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty bummed out. We only had about 30 minutes left to fish, and we pulled up to one last spot. And while we were making our last few casts, Josh hooked up with a nice one on a jerkbait. But these smallmouth bass are extremely strong and notorious for their ability to get off.
You ready?
Hey, let's go. Got him. A nice one too. Man, what a beautiful fish. The plan could not have worked out better. Caught this one in the bottom of the ninth. 321. We made a couple more casts to try to catch him a partner.
About 13.
And we caught one that was a little too small and had to toss it back. So we got him loaded in the holding tank, ready to make the trip back home. All right, 400 miles later, we made it here right before dark. Gonna get him added to Cedar Falls. There we go. Man, what a beautiful fish. We got the lights on in the pond, so we can probably see him swim off. We'll see how the other bass react to him. Man, I love the color patterns on him. But we got June, one of the female tiger bass, coming up to inspect the new fish. And you can tell weighing in at 3 1/4 pounds, he's going to be a little bit bigger than most of the other fish. Tiger's probably pushing 3 pounds, but sometimes bass can be aggressive and territorial. So by putting a smallmouth in that's a little bit bigger, we shouldn't have any of those problems. And it also helps that we're adding them at night, because if the smallmouth wanted to be left alone while he's adjusting to the new water parameters, there's plenty of places he could hide out where the other fish won't see him. He likes that current from the waterfall. Hanging out right here in this high current area. Alright, and here's the spotted bass. Little chunky guy. Alright. Enjoy your new home. He joined right up with a school of bass like he'd been swimming with them his whole life. One of them's already chasing bait. No way that's the spot. I think that's him. Spotted bass I just put in went over there and swatted at some of the bait fish. That reminds me of a little Moby right there. Alright folks, getting dark. I'm going to put some cameras underwater tomorrow and try to get a little better look at them. Because we've lost daylight today. It's been a long day. Oh, look at him. He sure is. A little spot's aggressive. We're going to need to stock some more bait in here after a couple days with him in here. Man, I love watching the bass work together and herding the shiners up in the shallow pockets so they can attack them. So I put some cameras underwater at daylight the next morning, and look who it is, the smallmouth out here thriving in the rocks and tunnels in Cedar Falls. I have a feeling he's going to love all the structure and hiding places in the pond. But if you'll notice that fish swimming in with a big white spot on his head, they both have those really dynamic colors, but the spot is really easy to pick out because of that big white circle. So I'll give you a quick update on all the bass so you can tell which one is which. And these two are Johnny and June. They're the second generation tiger bass. And then up top we have Tiger, which was a first generation bass, the original bass we stocked in the 5-acre pond. And beneath him is Eve, which is a third generation and was actually born right here in Cedar Falls. But I'm happy this little guy showed up because he's the mystery fish. We call him Houdini. We're not 100% sure where he came from, but he started out up in the wetland filter with another small bass we call Truman, and we're 99% sure he took a ride down the waterfall and into the main pool of this pond. But one thing to notice, he was born the same time as Eve, and Eve is about 3 times as big as him. I think Eve is on track to be one of the biggest pet bass we've ever had. Now we got Spot coming up. There's a really good look at that white spot on his head. You can't miss it. And the smallmouth bass, swimming around with Tiger, getting the layout of the new pond. Alright, now that you've gotten introduced to all the fish, it's time to name the new smallmouth and spot. And just like always, I let you all name every one of the pets, so leave a comment down below on what you think we should name these two. But the spotted bass is a very interesting species, and one of the varieties of spotted bass is actually called an Alabama bass. And they're really abundant in areas of Alabama like the Coosa River. But the difference in a spotted bass and a largemouth is spots grow really slow. So if you catch a 5 or 6 pound spotted bass, that's a really big fish. And even the record was caught out in California, weighing in at just over 11 pounds. But I find that interesting that they grow slower because they're extremely aggressive. The best way I can describe it is all of the spots are like Moby. And in fact, they're so aggressive that they've become a problem and started taking over some lakes due to their aggression and spawning. So if you get large numbers of spotted bass in a lake with other native bass, they can quickly take over. But ultimately, it forces the other fish in that body of water to become more aggressive, or else they'll never be able to compete for the food source. So we're probably going to see some fireworks with this little spot over the upcoming year, but there's a reason I only put one of them in the pond, and that's so their aggression didn't take over and interfere with the other fish, and also so they didn't multiply. And the smallmouth are similar to the spot in the fact that they don't get as big as a largemouth. If you catch a 7 to 9 pound smallmouth, that's considered a trophy size. And this pond's perfect because they don't mind living in clear water. They love the rocks. And they'll even spawn out in deeper water. And it's unfortunate that the cold weather just took out the prawns because smallmouth love crawfish and it can make up 2/3 of their diet. So we'll be sure to get some more of those in here this spring. But the plan could not have worked out any better. I'm happy that we got 2 new species added to the pond, and I'm thinking about adding another 1 or 2 this winter. A black crappie is for sure on the list, as well as any other species of bass. I'm considering a bass more local to the southern region, like a peacock bass, but I'm open to any suggestions, so just leave a comment down below on any other type of fish you'd like to see us add this winter. We all know that dogs are a man's best friend, so today we're on a mission to help you feed your pup top quality, healthy food. Sundays for Dogs is a fresh dog food made from a short list of ingredients, including 90% meat, 10% vegetables, and 0% synthetic nutrients. So we keep it stockpiled out here at the farm, and every time we have a new pup visitor like Mr. Obi, we offer some to him and have not had a dog refuse it yet. It's the beef flavor, and it looks and smells just like beef jerky. And since Sundays puts all their dog food through an air drying process to preserve the flavor and nutrition, it doesn't require refrigeration or preparation, just pour and serve. And I know that many of you have picky pups when it comes to food, but every dog I've seen try it has loved it. It's made with high quality ingredients like beef, chicken, turkey, pumpkin, and premium fish oils, so it's full of flavor. They've also designed the bag with a Velcro seal that makes it very easy to store away and keeps it fresh. And Sundays was founded and ran by a veterinarian that spent years getting the recipe dialed in, and they ship it directly to your door. So if you're interested in trying them out, go to sundaysfordogs.com/BamaBass and you can get 50% off your first order. So go check out Sundays for Dogs and let's keep them pups happy and healthy, folks. Alright, time to check back in on the eagles. They're not the best hunters. As you'll notice, whenever the fish feeders go off, they buzz over the top of all the tilapia and bluegills, but their success rate is pretty low. But I've noticed that over time, they've started developing their hunting skills, and they're starting to target species that are right there on the bank in the really shallow water. And as you can see here in this clip, their success rate goes up tremendously when they target those shallow water fish. Those are most likely tilapia, and they're also getting sluggish this time of year with that cooler water. They slow down and it makes them an easy target. But if you missed the past couple videos, one of the ducks that flew away over a year ago returned back to the pond. And I asked you all in the last video what we should name it, and the most popular name was Echo. I think that's a fitting name for her. But I initially thought that she flew away when the eagle showed up last year, but as you can tell in these videos, Echo is not afraid at all of the eagles. She enjoys eating the protein pellets when the feeders go off, so a lot of times they're hanging out right there in the same area. But I want you all to watch how this unfolds. As I mentioned earlier, the eagles were getting smarter and starting to change their hunting techniques, and you can see one of the eagles prefers hunting off of that big log right there. And I'm not 100% sure what happened here, but something spooked the duck and the eagle, and as you'll see, the duck frantically tries to get away and even goes up underwater, but like I mentioned, in that shallow water, the eagle's chances go way up. And so I wasn't able to tell what happened because the duck was underwater, but as I was replaying the clips, it's starting to look more and more like the eagle pulled the duck up on the bank, and the chances of the duck surviving aren't good. And after a few moments, the eagle flies away with it, You can see it there in its grip. And at this point, I was pretty bummed because you can even see the feathers floating out across the surface of the water. So as I was watching this, I was already trying to figure out how I was going to tell Sarah that the duck that came back to see her is no longer here. And then out of nowhere, Echo swims from the left of the screen right out into the feathers. So I have no idea what type of bird that was the eagle captured, but thankfully it wasn't Echo. We'll do a quick replay clip here. I'm not sure if you guys can tell what type of bird it is. It looked pretty small in size compared to Echo, and even went underwater, but unfortunately for that guy, it got a little bit too close to the eagle. And we even have some whitetails coming out to drink out of the pond. Now that the weather's cooled off, we're going to be seeing a lot more of them. So now let's check in on the eagle nest. If you're not familiar with it, a little over a month ago we built this eagle nest up in a tower, hoping that the eagles would use it as a nesting site this fall. But as I was looking back over some of the clips, if you look closely at the bottom center of the screen, you'll notice some movement there. And this particular bird has been spending 24 hours a day right here in this site. So I rolled through the clips to the next morning when there was a little bit of daylight to try to see what species it was. And whatever it is made a home right here beneath the nest. And as the crows showed up, I think it got a little bit spooked and flew out. But I wasn't able to get a good look at it until a couple days later, and I'm thinking it may be one of those kestrels, but I'm not sure. And with it living here basically 24/7, maybe it's building a nest in there, but I am happy that something's finally nesting up here on the Eagle Tower. Alright, sitting out here on the dock, got a little storm rolling in, about to feed the fish. Alright, while we watch some of the feeding clips, we're going to talk about some of the projects I have coming up for next year. So my goal all along was to build a second pond, and the main reason for doing this is that whenever you build a pond, you're only going to have a certain amount of productive years where all the fish are thriving, but it's almost a guarantee that at some point, something's going to happen to the pond, whether it be the fish get overpopulated, the genetics get bad, you have water quality issues, management issues, there's dozens of things that could go wrong. But on average, most people get a good 10 to 12 years of production out of a pond if you manage it the right way. So my goal for building the second pond was to wait 3 or 4 or 5 years after the first pond in hopes that if the 5-acre pond ever did start to decline, that would be about the time the new pond was in its most productive years. And that would also give you the option of draining the 5-acre pond if needed, or time to fix whatever the problems were. So for the second pond, we do have a location right here at the farm that will support about another 7 to 8 acre pond. The one big issue with it is we don't have as much watershed as we did for the 5-acre pond. So over the past 2 years, we have what I would consider the perfect amount of rainfall for the 5-acre pond. I rarely have to cut the well on except for the fall drought, so my fear is that if I build a bigger pond on the same property without the right water flow, I'd have to leave the pump running more often, which isn't necessarily a good thing because you're constantly changing those water parameters. But it's still an option. So the other alternative would be to buy a different piece of property, and even if it had an old pond on it, I think that would be an interesting project to take an old, unproductive pond, drain it, add new structure to it, rebuild the dam if needed, and then fill it up and stock it. Similar to the same process we did, but you would get to the best parts a lot quicker. But again, if you guys have a preference, let me know what you think below. We are also going to build some hatchery ponds here at the farm to start producing our own bait. You guys see how much it takes to feed these bass. So either way, a lot of good things coming up in 2025. Hey, look who it is. Happy our girl Echo made it. That was a close call. We thought you were a goner. She's out here enjoying some of those protein pellets. Still not intimidated at all. There's a good look at some of the threadfin shad. They've gotten a lot bigger after they spawned a few months ago. That's what the bass are going to feed on throughout the winter. So now we're going to take you along our journey where Nate Makes and I head out to New Mexico where he's in search of an elk. And don't be concerned if you're not into hunting. I'm just going to be showing you the sights and the incredible experience we had. And every chance I get to go out west, I take it because it's almost like a different world. You can stand on the top of a mountain and look for 50 miles in any direction and not see any structures or man-made buildings, just everything natural out in nature. And it is truly one of the most peaceful and incredible experiences you can have, in my opinion. But just like the smallmouth trip, it doesn't come without its challenges. I'm quickly learning what you guys up north have to deal with. Anytime you have sub-freezing temperatures, things don't go as planned. The plastic water lines in our pack froze, and me and Nate quickly learned that once you exceed about 9,000 feet in elevation, there's just not enough oxygen in the air. It doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in. If those oxygen molecules aren't there, it's tough to breathe. But each day we would hike anywhere between 5 and 10 miles and see some of the most beautiful countryside you'll ever see. And even though everything was frozen over, we still had those natural streams that made me wish I brought my fly rod. And we would spend an hour or two hiking up to the top of a mountain and getting to a good vantage point where you could glass over and see for miles and miles. And it was always rewarding when you found that big herd of elk. And that's one thing I learned about elk. It may take you 2 days to find them, and that's because they're all together. Once you find one of them, you're probably going to see 75 or 100. But one other species I enjoyed seeing was the mule deer. They weren't as active in the middle of the day, but as it started getting dark, you were for sure going to see some mule deer. You can see we had a close encounter with one that wasn't quite ready to jump over that cattle fence. And I was surprised that the most active spot in New Mexico was right at the camp we were staying at, because you could literally walk out of the door and the deer and other animals would be right there. At first I thought they were just curious, but eventually the skunk helped me figure it out. There were several apple trees right there at the camp, and so every night that's what drew all the wildlife in. As you can see, Mr. Skunk even got him an apple. And so as always, I give the New Mexico trip a 10 out of 10. If you all ever get an opportunity to travel out west, I highly recommend it. The hiking can be a little bit tough and grueling at times, but I feel like in life we're supposed to do hard things. The harder and more challenging it is, the more rewarding it's going to be. Alright, from New Mexico, back to the swamps of South Alabama, where we got one of the juvenile deer learning to cross the creek for the first time. And look who it is, we got the bobcat. It's rare to see them in daylight. An up-close encounter with Mr. Buck Deer. And we got some random doggos playing in the creek. Hey, look who it is, the fox squirrel that we call Foxy. It's been a while since I've seen Foxy, so it's good to see you, buddy. And you're actually getting pretty close to where we have the squirrel house. Got some more whitetail on the run from something. Maybe those doggos. Little bunny rabbit out eating at night. And Chip hanging out in the swamp. And look at these two big giant woodpeckers. Man, those are some big guys. And another buck cruising through the swamp. Won't be long before they start rutting. And one of the little guys out here chewing on some of the ferns. Alright, it's time to catch a few of these bass and tag them. If they hadn't been tagged before, we'll insert a new pit tag into them. But these bass should be in the winter patterns right now, out deep. Maybe where it's 10 to 12 feet deep out there. There are a few exceptions. We're running the well right now, and that's 70-degree water pumping in from about 150 feet underground. Using a small profile bait, underspin, 3/8 ounce, with a little swim bait. Got him. What we got here? Oh yeah. Putting up a little fight. That's what I love about wintertime fishing, is how fat they are. Alright, this fish has been caught 5'6", 9'8", 6'1". And it weighs 2.20 pounds. And this guy's named Quick Shot. Second time we caught him, and it's gained about a half a pound since February. There we go. Oh, it feels a little bigger. Oh yeah. Nice one. Another little butterball. Solid fish. This one's also been caught 5'6", 9'9", and it weighs 2.31 pounds. And this is Zip, the third time we caught him, and good growth each time we catch him. This has been one of the hottest parts on the pond the past month, and I think a lot of the bait fish are in here, but you got shallow water right there and real deep water right here, so they move in and out throughout the day. Got him. Chasing them bait. Little guy. But he wins the fattest little guy award. He's been eating. Alright, I doubt this one's been caught. Looks like he was probably born in the spring. Yep, he does not have a tag. Alright, this fish's tag is going to be 12232303. It weighs 1.36 pounds. Whoa, right at the bank. Man, another good one. They're all chunky this time of year. Man, another one that hadn't been caught. That's a long fish. All right, this fish is going to be 1233382, and it weighs 2.57 pounds. There we go. I notice these fish are wanting to eat it up a little higher. So if it's 10 feet deep, I'm only letting it go down about 4 to 6 feet. This one's a better one. Got him. Man, that's a big fish to have not been caught. Gotta love it. All right, this big gal is 12233993, and she weighs 2.18 pounds. So I added a few names to this list from comments you left in the last video. You can see we still have a few open slots, E, I, N, U, and Y. So leave a bass name down below, and we'll try to finish this list off. Let's see what's happening in Bonnie's Bayou. Got the kingfisher diving down, and Mr. Longneck here. Look like he's either eating one of the golden shiners or maybe tilapia. And there's the random doggos again. They must live nearby. And Sarah's happy that Echo survived. She's out feeding her little buddy. Liz and Sarah, 2 peas in a pod over there. Alright, it's time to feed the deer. Got the kids helping out today. Got the farmer planting some winter ryegrass. And Sarah writing her name in the feed so the deer know exactly who it was that fed her. If you want some quality entertainment for the kids, just put them in a feed trough with corn in it. That's good for a good 30 minutes of playtime. But we put some of the rack attack out. That seems to draw the bucks in. They're still hanging out in bachelor groups. Even got a little fighting action going on here. And there's the family of mamas and babies. Look at them licking them lips. Man, they love that stuff. And Mr. Spike challenging one of the bigger bucks. They're herded in here like cattle. And that's what the deer do whenever they get mad at me and I don't feed them enough. They take it out on the equipment. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along and see if the eagles take over the nesting site, and keep up with all our pond builds and aggressive bass. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and we will see you all next time.